And so the speaker we brought today is called Mr. Samuel R. Baker. And so I'll just give a quick introduction for him. So Mr. Samuel R. Baker, King's Counsel, was educated at the University of Alberta, Canada, where he obtained BA and LLB degrees, and Stanford University, where he earned a Master's of Law degree in International Law. He was also a teaching fellow there. Sam is also a fellow of the Patent and Trademark Institute of Canada. His honorary King's Counsel KC appointment recognizes lawyers of exceptional merit and contribution to the legal profession. Mr. Sam Baker is a senior practitioner in the field of domestic and international business transactions. He began his professional career in corporate and oil and gas law with McLeod Dixon, now called Norton Rose, then established with others the Canadian presence of global law firm Mr. Baker and Mackenzie, where he was an international partner for over 25 years. Mr. Sam Baker has been a Canadian counsel to a host of multinational corporations and ventures from a multitude of jurisdictions such as the Federal Express, Mars, Amway, Raytheon, Milton Bradley, US, Fujitsu, Mitsubishi Electric, Daifuku in Japan, Min Metals in China, Tech Mahindra, Synechron, Saibaj, Embraer, and Kenpotex. With that being said, please join me in welcoming Mr. Samuel R. Baker to the stage.
Good afternoon. It's an honor for me to be asked to address so many good-looking and intelligent people. Am I right? Which is it, more good-looking or intelligent? Well, you already heard something about my history. My instructions were to say something about myself, but I think that's enough. Maybe I'll just say that my family background is all in Great Britain by way of the United States. My grandparents immigrated from the United States in the 1890s to a group of small towns in southern Alberta. Can you hear me well? A group of towns in southern Alberta right near the border. So my connection with the big city and the big civilization was more with the United States than with Canada until I went to the University of Alberta, where I did my undergraduate studies in history, and then I spent 3 years doing volunteer work for my church in Europe before I went back to the University of Alberta for 3 years of law school. And then I was fortunate to get a fellowship, a teaching fellowship to Stanford University, where I spent a couple of years and got a Master's of Law degree. The biography you have says I'm a doctor. I'm not a doctor, I'm a master. LLM. But that seems to have been enough. As was mentioned, my main career was a 25-year career with the international law firm of Baker & Mackenzie. The name is kind of an accident. People always ask me if I'm related to the founder of the firm, Russell Baker. He became my best friend, but I'm not his son. So just to make that clear. However, I was one of 3 young fellows that established the Toronto office of this international law firm, which was just sort of starting up at that time for a few years, and is now has large offices in probably 40 countries, and is the only law firm that really started and became international by growing in each country, rather than acquiring other law firms along the way. So it's kind of unique, and it was a great experience. I didn't want to stop practicing when I took retirement, so I decided to just continue practicing with a select number of my clients and some of my specialty areas like commercial law, general commercial law, and trademarks and immigration. And you probably know Ms. Shong, who has been my assistant for 25 years and a tremendous help to me in my practice, both in Baker McKenzie and since I retired. So, what can I tell you? The first thing that comes to my mind when you ask about practicing law is that law, like other professions, like other professions, what are the professions? The professions are basically law, medicine, accounting, some other specialized areas. A profession is a service business, a service business. And this is important in so many ways. Probably the most important education, I'm speaking to the students now, probably the most important education you've had so far is just your relationships with your colleagues, your fellow students in school, because that has helped you develop your personality and your ability to relate to other people. So whether it's a doctor relating to his patients or a lawyer relating to his many, many clients, the name of the game is friendliness, openness, ability to communicate. And that word communicate is so important. It's easy to say, but we should all take 3 years of study of communication itself. Communication means they talk about listening. But before you listen to the problem that you have to deal with as a professional, you have to pay attention to the other person. And all our life, we've paid all our attention to ourselves. We're all selfish. We're all kind of inverted. We're so concerned about our career, so concerned about many things relating to ourselves personally. It's a whole talent. It's a whole skill to learn how to pay attention to somebody else. We all have a tape loop going around in our own head with our own concerns. Somehow we have to learn to shut that off and pay attention to the other person and listen. Really listen to what they're saying. Most of us are basically basically crippled because we don't really hear what the other person says. We hear 2 words and then start talking with our own thoughts. So it's a very important thing to learn how to actually stop and listen and digest what the other person's saying. Of course, you have to do it quickly, but you have to really hear what the other person is saying, because when a client comes to you to solve a problem, you have to know what the problem is. You have to be friendly enough to have rapport, and you have to pay attention to what the other person is like, not just to his words, but how does he feel? How does he feel? How does he look? Is he depressed or is he excited? You have to kind of very quickly get an understanding and then listen to what the real problem is, and then with your skills that you learned in law school, address the problem and try to figure out how you can help. So I make a distinction. I don't know whether Ms. Wong is in a profession where she has to meet the public all the time, or whether her work is primarily research in the back room. Now, there are some lawyers that are in the back room doing research, but not very many. Most lawyers are right out there facing the client. And one of the most important things that you can show on your resume is that while you were articling, you had client contact, client experience. So if you want to be a researcher only, well, you can go that direction even in law, but normally those are the people in the laboratory learning how to create a vaccine or something. Professionals are right out front presenting themselves to the public and dealing with the problems of the public. Now, one of the problems of that, in law at least, and I would think in medicine too, is that every one of your clients or every one of your patients thinks that he's the most important person in the world. And it's your job to present yourself to your client as if he was the most important person in the world. And that's not so easy. If you go into management, corporate management, take an MBA and become a manager in a company, well, at least you only have one client. You have the company is your one client. And I think it's probably much more relaxing because you kind of know what you have to do for that one client and understand that one client. As a professional, as a lawyer, you have to understand each different one with his own approach and his own problem, and then you're under pressure all the time because every one of them thinks, as I said, they're the most important, and so it's a great pressure on your time all the time. Think about, before you choose to be a lawyer, think about whether you have the stamina, whether you have the interest to deal with all of these different clients, rather than sort of have a job that you can do for one client. Well, as for turning to law itself, people ask me, what should I study for undergraduate? What course? In Canada, not so much in some other countries, but in Canada and the United States, we have to take an undergraduate degree. So part of the answer is it doesn't matter, because any intellectual training is good preparation for law. Even engineers. I kind of have a prejudice against engineers. I think they're only wrapped up in their numbers and measurements. But even engineers learn how to think, how to calculate, they can apply those skills to studying law. But in my opinion, the best preparation has to do with what I said, with communication skills, with speaking, with writing, especially the use of, in Canada, the English or French language. I have confessed that my main skills all my life has been that I'm a good writer. Quite apart from all of the very specific learning of trusts and contracts and torts and all that stuff. The ability to express yourself very clearly, especially in writing, in preparation for a court case or in preparation or in writing a contract, is the basic skill that a lawyer has to have. So no matter what kind of writing or speaking experience you get, it'll help you very, very much in practicing law, unless you decide to be in the back room writing briefs for the boss. So if you have any questions about it, I did my undergraduate degree in history, and I found that was and English, history and English and French, and those studies in communication were very helpful. They're not everything that you need to have for the skills of communication, but they're a lot. So even reading English literature, writing essays, political science where there's a lot of writing and analysis of what's going on in the world. In my judgment, these things are the most important preparation for practicing law. However, I regret that I hated accounting, and I didn't pay too much attention to accounting. And as a business lawyer, I have to read balance sheets and help to figure out what should happen with a merger or an amalgamation. And I've had to go back and take little courses in reading balance sheets. I wish that along with my degree in history, I had given just a little bit more attention to accounting, not day-to-day accounting so much, not making entries, not bookkeeper, but the ability to look at a balance sheet and know whether a company is in good condition and what condition it's in for acquiring another company and so forth. So you can't neglect business, but to my mind, it's only sort of a subcategory. The communication is the main thing. Now, I'll tell you something interesting about the development of the legal profession. When I started out, it seemed like the legal profession was made up of a bunch of law firms. Some of them were one or two men. You walk out, hang up your shingle, and practice law, or more typically, there would be a whole bunch of law firms, but they were all small. They were ranging from a few lawyers to maybe 20 or 30, but a law firm with 20 or 30 lawyers, when I was starting out, at least in Canada, was a big law firm. They tend to, now they've merged so that it's like accounting. There are only, in Canada, half a dozen big major law firms. Then there are still the individual practitioners that have decided to hang up their own shingle, or maybe that's the way a lot of people start out. But it's totally different from getting a job, getting a position with a big law firm. And in the middle, there's what we call boutique law firms that specialize in something like family law or labor law or something where they know everything about that particular field. So before you start out becoming a lawyer, or maybe along the way as you're studying and you find out what interests you, you need to decide whether you're going for the big time, where you'll definitely make a lot more money, or be a specialist where you might do very well too, because you're the one who knows everything about it. Taxation is a specialization. In my career, in starting my career with Baker McKenzie in Toronto, after a couple of years of practice in Calgary, taxation was a big thing. There was a big revision of the Canadian Taxation Act, and we were all kind of tax specialists for a while. But as time went by, I had a choice of specializing or kind of being a general manager of clients. That's why I talk so much about communication. And it turned out I wasn't very much of a good specialist in taxation at all. I can speak the language, but if I really have anything very difficult, I call for a specialist. So there are different approaches. If you have a passion for a particular subject, it might be trademarks. Marketing depends on trademarks, and trademarks have to be protected. And very often there are attacks on people's trademarks. Even trademarks like Honda. Have you noticed that the H on Honda is that there's an H for Honda and an H for Hyundai? And let's see, does it look a little bit like Kia? I don't know, but anyway, there have been big problems protecting these trademarks. And if you love marketing, if you love words, if you love symbols, and you're interested in branding that backs into marketing, well, become a specialist in trademarks. There's a big field there. In fact, it's part of my product, and I'm getting more inquiries these days about trademarks than I am about certain other subjects, even immigration. A lot of people, especially immigrants, and I know a lot of you are either immigrants or descendants of immigrants. Is that right? Where did your parents come from? Everybody's kind of interested in the movement of people around the world. But the immigration field, just for your information, is one which goes up, and for lawyers it goes up and down because the government keeps changing the law so much.